The Dividend Strategy, getting paid. Every month, I still remember the exact moment when everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was sitting in traffic, late for work again, staring at the dashboard clock ticking away my life in 15-minute increments. My phone buzzed. A notification from my bank app. I almost ignored it because honestly, checking my bank account had become this little ritual of disappointment. But something made me look. $73.42 had just appeared in my account. No paycheck, no refund, just money that wasn't there before. I pulled over because my hands started shaking, and that's when I saw the description. Dividend payment. That was 3 years ago, and since that morning, I haven't worked a single day without knowing that money was coming in whether I showed up or not. The number isn't $73 anymore. Last month it was $4,816. This month it'll be more. And here's what keeps me up at night in the best possible way. I did almost nothing to make it happen. But getting here? That required me to unlearn everything I thought I knew about money. And it started with a lie I'd been telling myself for 15 years. See, I thought I understood investing. I had a retirement account that I checked maybe twice a year, watched it go up and down like everyone else, felt smart when it was green and anxious when it was red, but mostly I just pretended it didn't exist because it felt like monopoly money. Numbers on a screen that I couldn't touch until I was 65, which might as well have been never. The psychological distance between me and that money was so vast that it might as well have been someone else's fortune. Then my cousin Marcus called me one Sunday. He's always been the money guy in the family, the one who reads financial books for fun and talks about compound interest at Thanksgiving, which normally makes me want to leave the room. But this time, he said something different. He said, "What if you could get paid just for owning something, not selling it, not trading it, not doing anything except refusing to let go?" I laughed because it sounded like a pyramid scheme or crypto nonsense, and I told him that. He laughed too, but then he said, "Check your email?" I did. He'd sent me a screenshot of his brokerage account. $642 had hit his account that morning from something called Johnson & Johnson. I knew that name. They make Band-Aids. He bought their stock 8 years ago, and now they pay him every 3 months just for holding on to it. That conversation haunted me for weeks because it exposed something I hadn't wanted to admit. I was trading time for money in the most literal, soul-crushing way possible, and I'd convinced myself that was the only option. 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, for a paycheck that disappeared into rent and bills and groceries before I even felt like I had it. Meanwhile, there were people out there who owned things, actual pieces of companies, and those companies sent them checks just for being owners. It felt unfair in a way that made my chest tight. But Marcus said something else that stuck with me. He said, most people never figure this out because the industry doesn't want them to. They want you focused on growth and charts and timing the market because that keeps you anxious and clicking and checking your phone. Dividends are boring. They're predictable. They don't make good headlines. But boring and predictable, he said, are exactly what change your life when you're living paycheck to paycheck with nothing in between but hope and cortisol. So if you're still watching this, if something about what I'm saying is resonating in that uncomfortable way where you recognize yourself in the story, do me a favor and hit the like button right now. Not later. Now. Because what I'm about to tell you is the exact method I used to go from zero dividend income to almost $5,000 a month. And the algorithm needs to know this matters to you, or it'll bury this video where nobody else can find it. I started researching dividends the way someone researches a disease they think they might have, obsessively, late at night, clicking through forums and articles and YouTube videos until my eyes burned. And the more I learned, the angrier I got, because this information wasn't hidden. It was right there. Companies have been paying dividends for over 100 years. Some corporations have increased their dividend payments for 50 consecutive years. 50 years of raises, automatic, no performance review required, no begging your boss for a cost of living adjustment. I found lists of these companies, the Dividend Aristocrats they're called, businesses so stable and profitable that they've survived recessions and wars and technological revolutions and still managed to send bigger checks to their owners every single year. Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, 3M, McDonald's. These weren't exotic investments. These were companies I interacted with daily without even thinking about it. I bought their products, made them richer, and went home to stress about my electric bill. The realization felt like being let in on a secret that was never actually secret, just ignored. But knowing something exists and actually doing it are different universes. I had maybe $2,000 in savings, which I'd been hoarding like a dragon because the idea of losing it terrified me, more than the idea of staying exactly where I was forever. That's the trap, isn't it? Fear of loss outweighs desire for gain, so we do nothing and call it being responsible. I opened a brokerage account on a Thursday night after 3 glasses of wine, which probably wasn't the most responsible way to start an investment journey, but I needed the courage. The interface looked complicated at first, all those numbers and graphs and terms I didn't fully understand. Yield, ex-dividend date, payout ratio. I almost closed the app. Almost. But then I remembered that $73 Marcus showed me, and I thought about what $73 meant in my actual life. That was groceries. That was gas for a week. That was breathing room between me and the overdraft fee I'd paid the month before. So I searched for Johnson & Johnson, the same stock Marcus had, and I looked at the numbers. The stock was trading around $160. The dividend was $4.24 per share, per year, paid quarterly. I did the math. If I bought 10 shares for $1,600, I'd get $42.40 a year, $10.60 every 3 months. $10.60. That's what stopped me cold. After all that research, all that excitement, all that revelation about the secret wealthy people knew, I was looking at $10.60 every quarter, less than $3 a month. I could find that in my couch. The disappointment was crushing, and I think this is where most people quit. They run the numbers on their actual situation, their actual money, and they realize the gap between where they are and where they want to be is so vast that it feels pointless to even start. Why bother getting $10 a quarter when your rent is $1,500 a month? It's not even a rounding error. It's nothing. I closed my laptop and went to bed angry at myself for believing there was a shortcut. Angry at Marcus for making it sound easy. Angry at the universe for being designed in a way that keeps people like me running in place. But here's what I didn't understand yet. What nobody had explained to me, what changed everything once I finally grasped it. That $10.60 wasn't the point. The point was that it would happen whether I woke up that day or not. Whether I went to work or called in sick, whether I got fired or quit or moved to another state. Those shares didn't care about my effort or my motivation or my mood. They just paid. And that automatic nature, that disconnect between income and time, that was the crack in the wall I'd been throwing myself against for years. I bought the 10 shares the next morning before I could talk myself out of it. $1,612, including fees. My savings account went from $2,043 to $431, and I felt physically sick. I'd just spent most of my safety net on 10 pieces of a company that makes baby powder, and in return, I was going to get $10 in 3 months. The fear was visceral. I checked the stock price every hour that first day, watching it move up and down by a few cents, calculating how much I was losing or gaining, even though I had no intention of selling. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept doing math in my head, trying to figure out how long it would take to build this into something that mattered. If I could save $500 a month and buy more shares, and those shares paid dividends, and I used those dividends to buy more shares, and compound interest did its thing over time, maybe in 10 years I'd have something meaningful. 10 years. I was 32. I'd be 42 before this strategy even started to feel real. The despair was suffocating, and I almost sold everything the next day just to have my cash back, to feel safe again, to stop the anxiety that came with every market fluctuation. 3 months passed. I'd honestly forgotten about the dividend payment date because life happened and work was stressful, and I was busy doing what I always did, which was trading hours for dollars and hoping there'd be enough at the end of the month. Then my phone buzzed. $10.60 appeared in my brokerage account. I stared at it for a full minute. It was real. A company I now owned a microscopic piece of had sent me money for doing absolutely nothing. I hadn't thought about these shares in weeks, hadn't checked the price, hadn't read news about the company, and yet here was money that didn't exist before. Something shifted in my brain. It wasn't about the amount, it was about the mechanism. This was proof that passive income wasn't a myth or a scam or something reserved for people who already had millions. It was just math and patience and the willingness to let go of control. I immediately reinvested that $10.60 into another fractional share. Now I owned 10.06 shares. Next quarter I'd get slightly more. Then, slightly more again. The growth would be invisible at first, microscopic, but it would be growth that required nothing from me except not touching it. That realization changed my entire approach to money. I stopped seeing my paycheck as something to spend and started seeing it as something to convert. Every month, I'd take whatever I could spare, sometimes $300, sometimes $700, once only $80 after an unexpected car repair, and I'd buy dividend-paying stocks. I built a spreadsheet to track everything, not the stock prices because that just made me anxious, but the dividend payments. How much I was getting, when it was coming, how it compared to last quarter. I diversified across different companies and different payment months because I'd learned that some companies pay in January, April, July, October, while others pay February, May, August, November. If I was strategic, I could have money coming in every single month instead of every quarter. That became the goal. Not some massive lump sum in the distant future, but a steady trickle that would grow into a stream, then a river. After 6 months, I was getting about $43 a month. After a year, it was $96. These numbers probably sound pathetic to some people watching this, but to me, they represented something I'd never had before. Momentum. The machine was working. Every dollar I put in made the next dollar easier. Every dividend payment bought more shares without me having to save for them. But here's where the story gets interesting. And this is the part I need you to really hear, because it's where most people's understanding breaks down. Around month 14, I lost my job. Budget cuts, last hired, first fired, the standard corporate betrayal that happens to someone every day in this country. I'd been there 3 years, thought I was safe, wasn't. They gave me 2 weeks severance and a box for my desk items, and I walked out into the parking lot feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath me. That night, I couldn't eat. I just sat on my couch running numbers, calculating how long my pathetic savings would last, wondering if I'd have to sell my stocks just to make rent. I checked my brokerage account, almost ready to liquidate everything, and that's when I noticed something. My dividend income for that month was supposed to be $104. Not enough to survive on, obviously, but it was $104 that was coming whether I had a job or not. In that moment of total financial chaos, something was still working. I still owned pieces of companies, and those companies were still profitable, and they were still going to pay me. It wasn't much, but it was proof that I'd built something separate from my labor. The psychological impact of that realization was bigger than the money itself. I found another job 6 weeks later, and during those 6 weeks, my dividend stocks paid me a total of $238. It didn't save me. My credit card debt and my brother lending me money saved me, but it helped. More importantly, it showed me what was possible. If $238 could come in during my worst professional moment, what could happen if I actually committed to this strategy with everything I had? So I made a decision that most people told me was insane. I took my new job, which paid $48,000 a year, and I decided to live like I made $36,000. The difference, $1,000 a month, went entirely into dividend stocks. No exceptions, no excuses. No, just this once for a vacation or a nicer apartment or a car that didn't sound like it was dying every time I started it. I became obsessive about it, tracking every expense, cutting everything that wasn't essential, saying no to dinners and concerts and weekend trips because I was chasing something bigger than temporary fun. My friends thought I'd lost my mind. My family thought I was being paranoid about money because of the job loss. Maybe they were right. But I couldn't shake the image of what my life would look like if I could replace my entire salary with dividend income. Not supplement it, replace it. That became my North Star, my North. The math was brutal when I really looked at it. To replace $48,000 a year in salary with dividend income, assuming an average yield of 4%, I'd need to accumulate $1.2 million in dividend-paying stocks. $1.2 million. I had maybe $14,000 invested at that point. The gap was so enormous that it should have been discouraging, but something had changed in me. I'd seen the machine work. I understood that time and consistency were the only variables that mattered. So I calculated how long it would take if I invested $12,000 a year, and the stocks grew at 7% annually while paying 4% in dividends that I reinvested. 18 years. I'd be 50 years old. Not exactly early retirement, but 18 years to never have to work again, to have money coming in every single month just because I owned things. 18 years that were going to pass anyway whether I did this or not. That felt possible. That felt real. So I committed to 18 years of living below my means, of investing everything I could spare, of watching my dividend income grow from pathetic to modest to meaningful. And if you're still here, if you've made it this far in the video, subscribe right now because you're exactly the kind of person who might actually do this, and I want to be part of your journey the same way random strangers on the internet were part of mine. Year 2 was when things started to feel different. My monthly dividend income crossed $250, which meant I was getting $3,000 a year just for owning stocks. $3,000. That was a nice vacation I wasn't taking, or a car payment I wasn't making, or a safety net that was building itself without my intervention. But more than the money, it was the psychological shift. I stopped feeling poor. I was still broke in the traditional sense, still living in a cheap apartment and driving a car with 160,000 miles on it. But I didn't feel trapped anymore. Every month I could see the evidence that I was building something, that the gap between my income and my expenses was creating a bridge to a different kind of life. I started optimizing everything. I researched which dividend stocks had the highest yields that were still safe. I learned about REITs, real estate investment trusts that were required by law to pay out 90% of their income as dividends. I discovered BDCs, business development companies with yields sometimes above 8%. I learned to filter out dividend traps, companies that paid high dividends because their business was failing and the payment wasn't sustainable. The education happened naturally because I was obsessed, because every piece of information could mean more money in my account next month. By year 3, my dividend income hit $620 a month, $7,440 a year. That was real money. That covered my groceries and utilities. That was a baseline below which I couldn't fall as long as those companies stayed profitable. And here's what nobody tells you about dividend investing. Once you cross a certain threshold, the snowball effect becomes visible. I was now earning enough in dividends every month to buy 2 or 3 more shares without touching my paycheck. Those shares would generate their own dividends next quarter, which would buy more shares, which would generate more dividends. The growth became exponential instead of linear, and I could feel it accelerating. I'd wake up some mornings and check my brokerage account just to see the dividend payment notifications. $42 from Realty Income, $67 from AT&T, $38 from Verizon, $93 from a REIT I'd bought 6 months ago. Each payment was small, but together they added up to something that was starting to change my relationship with work. I stopped caring as much about overtime or promotions because I knew my real wealth wasn't being built at the office. It was being built automatically, invisibly, in the background of my life. The turning point came in year 4, month 7. My dividend income for that month was $1,114. I remember the exact number because I'd been chasing 4 digits for months, watching it creep closer every payment period, and when it finally crossed over, I actually cried. $1,114 that I did nothing to earn except not panic and sell when the market dropped, except keep investing when it felt pointless, except trust the process even when the progress was invisible. That was more than my rent. If I lost my job again, I could keep a roof over my head with money that came from ownership rather than labor. The security that provided was unlike anything I'd ever felt. I wasn't rich. My net worth was maybe $190,000 at that point, spread across 40 different dividend-paying stocks and ETFs. But I was free in a way that most people making twice my salary weren't, because my baseline survival was covered by assets that worked for me. Everything I earned from my job now was extra, money I could use to accelerate the process or actually enjoy life a little, or save for emergencies without anxiety. Now we arrive at the present day, 3 years and 2 months from that first 10-share purchase that made me feel stupid and scared. Last month, my dividend income was $4,816. This month, it'll be around $5,200 based on the payment schedule. Next month, probably $5,400. The numbers keep growing because I keep reinvesting most of the dividends, because the companies I own keep increasing their payments, because compound interest is doing exactly what it's supposed to do when you give it enough time and don't interfere. I still work, but I don't have to, not really. I could quit tomorrow, and my lifestyle wouldn't change much because my dividend income covers my expenses with room to spare. But here's the thing that keeps me awake now. The question that I think about constantly. What if I'd started this 10 years ago? What if someone had explained this to me when I was 22 instead of 32? What if I'd taken that first job out of college and immediately started living below my means and investing the difference into dividend stocks? I'd be financially independent right now, completely free. The regret is real, but it's also motivating because I can't get those 10 years back, but I can make sure I don't waste the next 10. So, let me tell you what I learned. The real lessons that nobody wants to say because they're not exciting or sexy or easy to sell in a headline. Dividend investing is boring. It's slow. The first year feels pointless, like you're throwing money into a void and getting nothing back. The returns seem pathetic compared to stories you hear about people making thousands on crypto or options trading. But boring and slow are features, not bugs. Boring means you're not checking your phone every 5 minutes. Slow means you're building something sustainable instead of gambling. The key is starting with whatever you have and committing to consistency. It doesn't matter if you can only invest $50 a month. That's $600 a year, which at 4% yield is $24 in annual dividends, which reinvested buys more shares, which generate more dividends. In 10 years, that $50 a month becomes $7,600 invested if you never increase it, but probably closer to $9,000 if you reinvest dividends and the stocks grow even modestly. That's $360 a year in passive income. Not life-changing, but it's $360 you didn't have before for doing nothing except being patient. And if you can increase that monthly investment as you get raises or promotions or side income, the numbers get serious fast. $100 a month becomes $18,000 in 10 years with reinvested dividends and modest growth. $200 a month becomes $38,000. $500 a month becomes $102,000, generating over $4,000 a year in dividend income. These aren't hypotheticals. This is just math. The only variable is whether you actually do it, month after month, year after year. Even when it feels pointless, even when your friends are buying new cars and taking expensive vacations, and you're eating rice and beans to free up another $100 for dividend stocks. The sacrifice is real, but it's temporary. The freedom is permanent. So here's what I need from you right now. If this resonated, if you see yourself in this story, if you've been looking for permission to start building something that might take years to pay off, but will absolutely change your life if you commit to it, I need you to do 3 things. Subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to keep documenting this journey and showing you exactly what I'm buying and why. Leave a like on this video because it tells the algorithm that this matters and helps other people find it. And comment below telling me where you are in your dividend journey, even if you haven't started yet. Even if you think I'm completely wrong about this strategy. I want to hear from you. I want to build a community of people who understand that real wealth isn't built overnight. It's built in the boring middle, in the months and years when nothing seems to be happening but everything actually is. Let's do this together.